There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? New Vallow channel, where we talk about those faces. Talking news. Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Child Daybell and Vallow both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Welcome guys to Chasing a Murderer Talking News. I want to say real quick before we get started, if you like this channel and the stuff that I do, make sure that you subscribe and like. But most definitely make sure you pop in the comments and say hello. This is going to be an audio only on part 49 of Life Beyond the Grave, which is attached to the Lori Vallow case. This case is loaded with information and drama. And so if I don't do just audio uploads in between the videos, we'll never get finished. And Lord knows, in order to understand this case, you have to understand the belief system. And let's not forget the fact that there's so many people involved with this group. It's insane. If you don't understand the people, the belief system, you won't understand how we got to where we did. Correction, to where Lori and Chad are today. We left off where Lori Vallow likes to paint this very beautiful picture of her family and that they are the perfect family and pretty loaded as well. They go to church every Sunday. She spends a lot of her time with the youth group at the church. She's working in the temple. But there's a little bit of chaos going on behind closed doors. 2 of her children have become teenagers. This is one of the most difficult parts of her life, is dealing with teenagers. In fact, she'll refer to Tylee basically as a dark soul. And it started in her early teens. We know that Joseph Ryan had been actually talking to Charles Vallow through email. And a lot of it had to be, well, about Colby Ryan and how difficult he is. And Charles Vallow was very intent on making sure that he took up for Colby Ryan. But now it seems that Charles is having to fight these battles that Joseph Ryan warned him about. According to a few witnesses, Charles Vallow was being treated terribly by these 2 kids. But in Lori's view, he is treating the kids terrible. In fact, in the future, she will use this against him, saying that he was getting quite physical with Tylee Ryan and that he and Colby were not getting along. And according to later friends of Lori Vallow, Lori often argues with Charles Vallow. He can't do anything right for her. He tries, but he just can't. But it seems that Charles was a very supportive man to Lori. He would often, like I've mentioned before, pay bills for her family members, like phone bills. Pay for vacations for friends or people who are associates through the church. Giving whopping amounts of money to the youth group of the church in Hawaii. Lori was big on doing things for her daughter, like Broadway Kids. This is a music camp for kids in Arizona. Lori was one of the very many leaders of the camp. And witnesses from this camp say that they had no idea that Lori was going to have these kind of issues she has in the future. These witnesses also testify that there were 4 main leaders and 6 assistants, and probably around 100 or so kids every year, which they would separate into 5 different groups. While they remember Lori Vallow, many of them said that they don't remember Tylee. They say that Tylee did do this little camp for about 2 years. Joseph Ryan was actually not allowed to attend any of these little plays and little shows that they would put on, but he did get pictures. This is something I forgot to mention, and this was around, I guess, 2012. Tylee Ryan actually gets one of the leads in one of the shows. So this is before they go to Hawaii. So it seems Lori has always been interested in, Hollywood type scenarios, as well as the spotlight, even for her children. But even being part of the children, she was always wanting to be in a leadership role. So remember this, whatever she's involved with, she likes to be on top. And as I mentioned before, I felt like she's always wanted to work her way into the church a little bit higher, but wasn't able to get in with the administrative part of it. And the men that she's married to, she also wants them to take a big part in the church and try to move their way up into bigger parts. That's very important for you to keep in mind as we go forward into this future and chaos that she's going to be in, and not too long from now. So we have learned that Lori's always liked to be in the spotlight, starting from her high school years as a cheerleader. Going into her young adult years, she was on the Wheel of Fortune. She was in a beauty pageant in Texas. She's a yoga instructor. She also is over the kids' youth group in Hawaii, and she's also one of the leaders at the Broadway Kids in Arizona. And during this time, Lori's reading these books by Daybell and Julie Rowe. Lori's learning that there's a different type of leaders that's attached to the LDS. Well, they claim they are, but according to the LDS, this is just a branch. These are people that are going against the church rules. They're meeting after church. They're meeting privately in houses and walking this earth as if they are seers, prophets, visionaries. There's something I want to talk about, and this is something you have to decide for yourself, but in my opinion, I noticed that Lori Vallow, I think Charles knows that Lori has some mental struggles. I really do believe he knows this, but for whatever reason, and I think a lot of people can speculate as to, come up with their own ideas as to why, he likes to pretend that doesn't exist. And I think once court and trial starts and begins, I think we'll find out a little bit more information that Charles probably knew a lot more about Lori than he cared to admit, or anyone else. I do think he realized that she was capable of hurting people, and I think he knew some of these plans for Joseph Ryan. And Charles is looked at as a very good man, a good person, a good father, a good husband, a good friend. What would make somebody like this stay with someone that has these very dark traits? Because there's no doubt in my mind, he had some very serious battles with the family, including the children, mostly his wife, trying to make this work. And I bet Kay Woodcock one day will be able to enlighten a lot of us a little bit more on this background, at least in this timeline. One of the most loyal people in Charles Vallow's life is his sister, Kay Woodcock. It's important for you to note that Charles would confide into his sister, especially in future. So for those of you that might be confused about where JJ comes from, Kay Woodcock is the grandmother of JJ, comes from her son, which we're not going to go into too many details. And Charles Vallow, being her brother, adopted JJ because he had the means to do so, and they had other children that they felt would be a great home and another chance for JJ to have a growing family, a very responsible family, and so that JJ is well provided for. During this time, Julie Rowe and a few of her friends like Daybell and Hector Salsa, they are spreading that they are ready to build an army. What kind of army? It's the Lord's army. The army that is preparing for the second coming of Jesus Christ. All three of their visions are starting to become a little bit more active and also more certain. Julie Rowe is having visions of them being at a camp, and she sees herself in the camp in the future, mind you, with her husband. And she sees her husband riding horseback, carrying a gun. Why would her husband need to carry a gun? She says, I saw my husband Jeff was one who was called upon to keep watch. I saw him sitting high up in a tree, overlooking the area, not far from camp. Later, I also saw him mounting a horse with a rifle in his hand, leaving the two other men to travel a greater distance from the camp and keep guard. Meanwhile, Chad is sharing in his blog his way of researching the second coming and how it really affected him, brought on a lot of fear for him. And some of the people that he is researching includes non-LDS people, LDS people, focusing on a lot to do with spirit worlds and where they manifest or appear out of nowhere. He's focusing on astral projection, energy healing, and many near-death experiences. Now, I think it's important for you to understand that one of the books, I believe, according to my research, he really focuses on is called Return from Tomorrow, which is by George Ritchie. And I haven't had time to finish researching everything that Chad Daybell was interested in, because you got to remember, he said his ideas are not creative, that everything in his books is taken from somebody he knows or has met or has encountered. The book Return from Tomorrow, he says, is one of the first near-death books that he really read, and it was written by a non-LDS man. He saw a darker side of the spirit world, including the spirits lingering near Earth, still seeking to take part in mortality. So remember this when we start talking about demon possessions or demon takeovers of bodies in the future. Another book is The Spirit World Manifestations by Joseph Heinerman. He says that's another collection of LDS-based near-death experiences. And this is not limited to only human spirits. He also reads There Is No Death by Sarah Manette, which is, at the time, a recently published account that shares new insights, including the possibility of our pets joining us in paradise. And you will also hear Julie Rowe speak about this topic many times, where they believe that the spirit world is actually here on Earth, but in a different dimension. And a lot of these spirits, they can touch each other, spirit to spirit. Many of the teachings in these books suggest that spirits actually like to hug other spirits if they're good. But if they're wicked, they like to fight. Chad said that he also relied very heavily on an LDS president, John F. Smith. His visions of the spirit world found in the Doctrine and Covenants section 138. So there's no doubt in my mind that Chad Daybell is obsessed with the afterlife. And he admits this. And he says, despite his interest in the spirit world, he was a cemetery sexton for several years, and that books like Chasing Paradise would not have been written without the personal experience that showed him how close the spirit world truly is. And you have to remember that Chad and his wife Tammy, they're working very hard at the temple. They're working mostly on Tammy's ancestral line, because remember, they're doing this for the baptism of the dead. And Chad mentions the fact that he says he and Tammy both felt confident that her ancestors had accepted the work and were progressing in the spirit world. What I'm sharing right now is really important. The fact that Chad says that he's able to sense these spirits and how they depend on him in order to make sure and to be sure that all family members, their work is complete everyone and their names have been submitted for the baptism of the dead. Chad Daybell mentions also that his grandfather Guy often would see spirits, sometimes referred to as messengers from heaven. I can't go into it right now, but just know that his grandfather was adopted. And so for Chad, the family tree or the family history was very important to him. He claimed that his grandfather and the grandmother were able to do temple work for dozens of their relatives and trace the line back to the royalty of England. Chad mentions a very significant visit that comes to Grandpa Guy's mother, who died when giving birth to Grandpa. And he mentions the fact that that father allowed for another family, I'm going to spell this for you, Oylers, to raise that child. And he had rarely ever seen his real father. It seems that his grandfather kind of pushed his way away from his true ancestral line and was actually adopting this new family name. But with prompting from a messenger from heaven, he completed the temple work for those ancestors he had pushed away that time ago. And that this experience touched him so much that he returned to using his birth name of Chestnut. Chad claims that his grandpa was a bishop for Springville, the singles ward, and he was still bishop the same time he met Tammy. But his grandfather develops health issues, which ends up making it very hard for him to serve a mission. And that he uses, people like his grandfather and his grandmother, their personalities, and their fictional counterparts, basically. And what I notice is he seems to have a lot of trouble determining fiction from nonfiction. He seems to see these same people, let's, for example, his grandfather Guy, who has his true life, his reality life, and then he has his fictional character life in Chad's books. Chad will speak on it sometimes as if that fictional world is real. In a way that Chad Daybell, I think, in my research, sees or deals with life as he does. When he said that he walks in a world where the veil is half open, he's telling the truth. He cannot decipher what's real and what's not real. Because when he's writing these books, when he's looking at the world in front of him, he's also imagining it in another dimension, let's say. And I don't think a lot of people realize this, but this is who he is. This is the way he lives, and this is the way he thinks. Chad Daybell continues to do more research by reading a lot of books. One of the other books that he is reading is Beyond the Veil series, Volume 1 through Volume 5, I think it is, by Lee Nelson. So this is from another LDS perspective. And for some of his books, like Chasing Paradise, he read I Saw Heaven by Lawrence Tooley. But a majority of his spiritual interests resonates with his grandfather Guy. So Chad is always trying to figure out, how interactive spirits are within our world. If you read his books, you can especially read about a character, Tina and Frank, where he speaks about these secrets as if they are condemning to him, and that he needs to bring these secrets out in the open in order to save all of their souls. I truly believe this is a mirror of how Chad feels. He feels he has to live in secret. And this is why he has these meetings behind closed doors, away from the church. So while Chad is struggling to come out with his secrets, Julie Rowe is wide open with these secrets, and she's just going pretty strong. Except for the fact that she has several people from the LDS complaining. And we are going to actually witness her evolution from 2015 into 2020. According to a few witnesses, there are times when Julie starts getting angry with the church leaders and talks behind their backs. A lot of the church leaders believe that Julie Rowe and her intentions are of oneself motivation, self-evolution, self-promotion, and even self-made prophecies. And deceit will come easy from outside perspective. So here's something interesting a lot of people do not know about Julie Rowe, but I do through the research that I've done. It's not something that she's been always pushing. She doesn't always push this, but there are times that I think she has this power where she feels if you are an enemy, if you do not believe in whatever she teaches or she shares. And let me tell you what I have found so far, at least. It suggests that if you have high dollar tags, you can take part in these great new experiences, especially with Julie Rowe. Many people say that Julie probably sees herself as a goddess. This new insight, well, it's very dangerous, and it pulls her away from God altogether in most people's opinion. Familiar to Lori later on, she becomes very infatuated by Satan, as we'll go over that in the future, as you will see. I mean, it'd be in many of her podcasts, because like Lori, which is something you need to pay attention to here, Lori's mimicking someone else. She's mimicking Julie Rowe, because Julie believes that Satan is directly after her. This is the same thing Lori Vallow will say to friends and family later on. Julie believes that Satan is actually targeting her specifically. But in my opinion, it seems that she somehow gets a thrill out of believing such powerful being is just spending so much time going after her. And again, this will be familiar to Lori Vallow in the future. And there will be warnings of the devil and demons, and they will speak through her podcasts, and they will mirror the exact actions Lori distributes. So many sins: lust, fame, going over the church leaders, lies, deceit. It's very strong with people like these guys, okay? They're building these new groups that a lot of outsiders looking in, especially LDS even, referring to them as cults. Some people are thinking, are people like Chad Daybell, Julie, and Lori, are they demons disguised, pointing at everyone else, blaming them to be the evil ones, when in fact, it's the pointers. And so a lot of Mormons are very, very upset with people like these guys right now. This is the work of priestcraft. This is more like the work of the devil. But some people following Julie feel the total opposite. They believe this is a new modern evolution of the church, that there's more to God, church, and it's within the universe itself. It's within the energies the universe distributes. So people like Julie Rowe, Hector Salsa, and Chad Daybell will have very loyal followers all the way through the end. But to be fair, I believe that Julie Rowe does believe in a lot of the stuff that she is teaching. And also, to be fair, I don't think she realizes just how dangerous it can be. Because I do not think, so people don't think I'm just attacking her, I'm just sharing how I think the story evolved. That she's a bad person. Not saying she's the best person, but she's not in the same category with Chad and Lori. And I think a lot of people have a lot to learn from this story, and that's why I'm sharing it like I am. I want to share the truth of it. Most people learn best from their mistakes. I also want to make it very clear that there are people who are supporting Julie Rowe they're couples where the wife is totally over 100% supportive, while the man is considered to be a demon if he's not going along on the ride. Okay, so remember that, because that's something Lori and Chad do as well. So according to one witness, allegedly, a man didn't want this woman to divorce him because, you know, he was not supporting this stuff that she was supporting with Julie Rowe. He's cashed out his 401k, he's moved, he's given up a good job, and they're doing this to prepare for a huge earthquake that's supposed to come. His wife believes in Julie Rowe just as much as she believes in God. In her eyes, Julie is almost as powerful as God. They are taught that Julie is a warrior goddess, something else familiar to Lori Vallow in the future, which is where, I'm trying to figure out. A lot of people are putting a lot of the blame into Chad. The truth of the matter is it seems that Chad and Lori are getting a lot of their ideas from this woman, because later on there are claims that Julie Rowe is a witch and that she has these powers to actually invade people's minds, to interact with them through spirit. So, and we'll talk more on that a little bit later. For now, I have to close out because I was struggling to get this up, because I said, yeah, I have this up 2 days ago. Well, things have been happening. I thought, yeah, I have time to do this. But my phone broke, and it's been hard transferring all that information over because I do everything on my phone. Share below what you think about what I'm sharing right now. What are your thoughts? What are your favorite parts of this video? And guys, don't forget to subscribe, like, and you can give to Patreon if you want to help support this channel. Keep it going. I love you guys. I'm hoping I can get more one-on-one time with you guys soon. I'm working on it. Talk soon.